So last week we talked about Proverbs with wisdom and words, and so tonight we're going to go a little bit in a similar direction to it. Tonight we're going to be talking about Proverbs on anger in fighting, which a lot of it has to do with words. I mean, I understand that we could have physical fighting, and that could be part of this. And I also know that we could have fighting that really doesn't involve words. As a matter of fact, when people are really fighting with each other, sometimes they don't have a lot of words. But at the same time, when somebody is fighting and words are used, oftentimes it is, very harsh words and foolish words. And so tonight we're going to be talking about Proverbs that deal with anger and then deal with fighting as well. Okay? All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and start with the very first one, which is Proverbs chapter 14 in verse number 29. And so it says, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but who is quick-tempered displays folly." Now, when we go and start to line these up, how are we going to line these up again? What do we have the counterpart to patient? What is the quick-tempered? The counterpart to patient is quick-tempered. Okay? So, what is the other element here in this verse? Understanding and falling. These are contrast to one another, aren't they? Okay? As a matter of fact, it's not just understanding, but it's great understanding as well. And so you've got patient, which is going to be contrasted with quick-tempered. You've got great understanding, which is going to be contrasted with folly. Okay? So when we look at Proverbs and wisdom, then we understand that great understanding or understanding is going to be, kind of synonymous with wisdom, and then folly is going to be synonymous with foolishness, right? Okay. So the person that's going to be patient is going to be the one that is being wise. And how are they wise? Well, they're going to be showing very great understanding in the situation that's going on. But the one who's going to be quick-tempered is going to be somebody who is displaying folly, or somebody who's going to be displaying very foolish ideas that don't make much sense and is in contrast to the great understanding. Okay? So when you think about quick-tempered, what is quick-tempered? It's snappy. It's somebody who's quick to anger, quickly angered, right? Okay? And the reason why I bring this up, because, the way that we look at this is going to be also the way that we look at this. When you look at patient, sometimes we look at patient in terms of we're just waiting, and we're patiently waiting. But this idea about patient is going to be something that is contrasted with quick-tempered or quick-angered, and go slow to anger. In fact, some translations will translate this slow to anger and quick to anger, or quickly angered. And so whoever's going to be slow to anger is going to be having great understanding about a situation, but whoever is quick to anger is going to be showing folly. Have you ever been in a situation where you have flown off the handle about something, and then later on you realized that you didn't quite understand everything, and had you understood everything, then you wouldn't have gotten upset to begin with? Never? Well, good for you. Because I have. I can't think of a specific reference, a specific time, but I can think of many times where I have been, quick to be angry about something. And if I would have just simply been, put a pause on it, then I would have kind of realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't really have all the facts. I don't have all the information. I'm misunderstanding what somebody is saying. I'm misinterpreting somebody's mood. I'm jumping to some kind of conclusions. I am taking some of my own anger or my own stress, and I'm interjecting this into another situation that really has nothing to do with anything, right? And so if you can think about it, if we're going to, first of all, kind of put the brakes on our anger and be slow to anger, then maybe we can start to understand what is going on, and we can start to formulate a good, wise response to what's going on. And at the same time, by putting the brakes on the anger and then start to understand what's going on, then all of a sudden, maybe we can start to resolve things in our own mind, in our own life, without the anger, right? Okay? But when we just jump into it and, oftentimes think emotionally instead of rationally, then what we're going to be doing is we're going to just be putting our folly on full and plain display for the world to see. Okay? All right.
I like thinking about it is great understanding brings patience. Like I think about it with my kids. Like when I understand that they are hungry or they are tired or they can't articulate what they're trying to say and they're frustrated. Like understanding where they're at and where they're coming from gives you a second gives you more patience.
Okay. Right. I guess sometimes you've heard the expression "walk a mile in somebody else's shoes." When you start to take things from the perspective of another person, sometimes you can understand a little bit about what and why they're doing, and then you have a little bit of sympathy that's involved with it. Chloe, is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
And
so,
what I think about, and this is more to do with my own experience with anger.
you experienced anger before?
Yeah.
Okay.
With extreme frequency. Understanding it in a greater context, and what I mean by that is getting upset over something that's not worth getting upset over.
Mm-hmm.
Like compared to everything else that's going on, it's a inconsequential thing.
Yeah.
It just really doesn't actually matter. Like, yeah, it wasn't perfect, or yeah, it didn't go right, but in the context of the day, it doesn't actually change anything.
Yeah.
There's not a reason to be upset about it.
Yeah. One thing that I think about is, I try to remind myself, in 10,000 years, is this going to matter? Because if we're saying we're going to be around 10,000 years from now, and chances are in 10,000 years, it wouldn't make any difference anyway. Even if we were to live on this earth for 10,000 years, it wouldn't make any difference anyway, right? But being with the Lord in heaven and having a totally new perspective on life and living, are the things that we get bent out of shape about really worth getting bent out of shape about? No, it really isn't.
But that's a hard thing to remind yourself whenever you have the bubbling blood.
That's right.
It's why it takes great understanding, because you even have to really understand your own anger.
And, well, that's true.
Because I think the better you understand it, the better in the moment you're able to react properly to it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is that I think that these two kind of work, hand in hand with each other. And that is, great understanding will give us the slow to anger, but also being slow to anger is going to aid in our great understanding. Because if we're doing the opposite, where we're being quick to anger, then we're not going to understand it at all. But if we'll slow our anger down, maybe remove ourselves from the situation, maybe take a couple of breaths, maybe start to remind ourselves, oh, well, maybe there's another side to the story. Maybe I need to think about this or pray about this or whatever the case may be. That's slowing our anger down so that we can go and start to understand things later. Right?
Yeah. I say too, I think this works even if it's not your anger, but if you're out in traffic and people are being angry and yelling at you, if you do the same thing, especially if it's someone, you have to just think, well, maybe they're in a hurry, or maybe they're, there's something going on with them, and, even, and if you have to have an encounter, I've heard that, if you say a gentle word to them, it really brings their anger down.
Right, right.
So I just wondered if too, that it helps with other people around you, because, like Chloe doesn't ever have that problem. So, but if people around her do that, then yeah.
I agree with that. And one thing that we looked at last week was a gentle word. Turns away wrath, but a harsh answer stirs up anger. I can't remember. Okay. I think a gentle answer turns away anger. A harsh word stirs up wrath, or something like that. I can't remember. It's 15:1, but okay. So one thing I want us to see is that when we think about anger, what we need to do is understand that anger is going to be foolish, right? And not having anger is going to be wise, right? So when you think about like that, when we lose our temper, is it a sin? Okay? Do bad things come along with that? Yes. Okay. 15:18. A hot-tempered person stirs up a conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. And so, maybe this, Carol, is a little bit more about what you were talking about with that. But hot-tempered, and so here we've got, hot-tempered is going to be contrasted with patient. And then we've got stirs, which is going to be contrasted with calms. And then conflict, which is going to be synonymous with quarrel. Okay? And so this is contrasting proverb, an antithetical. It's antithetical. Because Shannon said, I think you're mispronouncing that, and I went and I Googled it, and it's antithetical. At least that's how Google pronounced it. Those darn British mess everything up, don't they? Okay. Can't trust them. Okay. It's antithetical if we're reading out of the King James, and antithetical if we're reading out of something else. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Hot-tempered. Notice that here we've got quick-tempered. Now we've got hot-tempered, right? So what's hot-tempered compared to quick-tempered? It's kind of what it sounds like, right? Quick-tempered is going to be something that is jumped into really fast, really rashly, right? Snap reaction. Hot-tempered is going to be somebody who is mad, somebody who is ticked off, somebody who is upset, and they are out on a ledge. Okay? All right. So what is a hot person going to do? They are going to be making the situation worse. Are they not? They are going to be stirring up conflict. Okay? But the one who is patient, or the person who is slow to anger, is going to be doing what? They're going to be helping resolve the conflict. They are going to be calming a quarrel. And so it's like what we've just been talking about with the gentle answer. When somebody is very calm, very in control of their own emotions, and they are ones that will listen to other sides, and they'll not be upset about things, then there is kind of a calming effect that's going on within some kind of group, isn't there? And that is that, if the group is kind of being agitated and rising up, somebody who's collective, somebody who's collective of their emotions, somebody who's calm, then what they're going to do is they're going to have that calming influence on the group, right? Okay. And so when somebody spouts something off, then the person who is in control of their emotions, they're going to reply back in a very calm manner. And when somebody replies back in a calm manner, a gentle word calms a quarrel, and so, it starts to cool things off. Okay? All right. So we can kind of understand and get that. But what happens when you got somebody who is just really, really mad about things? What do they have a tendency to do or say? They're lashing out. Anything to get a rise out of the other person. And when somebody lashes out at somebody else, what is the automatic tendency for that person to do? The one that is on the recipient end. Get defensive or even go offensive too, And it's like, hey, I'm going to fight fire with fire. If you're going to come at me, I'm going to come right back, right? Okay? And so what you've got is this person's lashing out, then this person's lashing out. If you've got a group and then all of a sudden the emotions start to come up, because have you ever been in a group where all of a sudden, people are starting to get really hot under the collar with one another? What happens to you and your adrenaline level? Yeah, it starts to go up too, right? And then all of a sudden, if you get pulled into it, then, your adrenaline's already up there. And can't you see how a hot-tempered person in that regard is going to be stirring up a conflict? Okay?
Wasn't it earlier in Proverbs that it was the 7 things that God hates, or 6 things that God hates and 1 thing that he finds detestable? And it was the one who stirs up conflict.
Yeah, that's in chapter 6, I believe. Let's see what we got here. Let's make sure. Oh, if only I had my glasses on so I could read this.
They're right there.
They are right there. But I'm so lazy. The lazy man puts his hands up.
Blame it on your back.
Wasn't there a proverb about being a sluggard too?
Yeah. Okay, so verse number 16. There's 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. And then we go on down, and then at end of verse number 19, and a man who stirs up dissension among his brothers. And so that is stirring up dissension. So when we look at, this right here about somebody who is stirring up a conflict, again, we may just say, oh, well, that's just the way that things are. That's the way that people are. But we don't need to look at it that way, do we? We need to be looking at things the way that God looks at things, and we need to be trying to mold and pattern our lives after what God wants us to be. That's what being godly is all about. And as Christian people, we should be godly. And when you look at Jesus, and as Christians, we should be modeling ourselves after Jesus. Do you think that Jesus was ever hot-tempered and stirred up a quarrel? No. Well, he did, but that was zeal for my Father's house consumed me. Okay? So that was something a little bit different. But as far as, the disciples saying something stupid, he never lashed out at them. When he was standing before the chief priests or Pilate or, the Sanhedrin or the Jews before that, he never lashed out and was hot-tempered about things. They were, but he wasn't. Okay? All right. Further questions and comments about that one?
So, and this is kind of just my mind going off, but in kind of, I was still kind of thinking about 14 and 29, but in being patient, you have great understanding. Mm-hmm. Being quick-tempered, you display folly, you are unwise. It made me think, sometimes we don't want to be patient. We hate patience.
Yeah.
The joke, don't ask for patience because there's only one way to get it. Which is true. But this may just be me, but sometimes I don't want to be patient. I don't want to calm myself down because I don't want to know the truth. I don't want to learn the right thing. My sin nature is telling me you need to be mad about this, or this is you're righteous in this, and I know that if I calm myself down, I'm probably going to find out something else that's going to make it very clear that I was wrong.
Yeah.
And
That's what we call pride.
yeah, but in that nature, my thought is, we actually have the desire to have the understanding.
Oh yeah.
To want to be patient, to want to be not hot-tempered. We actually need to have the desire to know the truth.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it goes back to pride, which I don't have any trouble with. But
See, me and Jake, we're good.
but I really think you got to have the desire for that,
Right.
for it to actually come.
And that's the whole way of wisdom, because this right here, this is foolish, right? And what's more is that this is natural. Okay? This is wise, and it is not natural. That is why we have to have the fear of the Lord, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. We realize, hey, I need this wisdom. I am not a wise person, and so therefore I accept what the Lord wants me to do. And with His grace and His mercy, we can do it. Okay? Now, I think all of that is going to be a good segue into this next one here, Proverbs 29:22. And that is, an angry person stirs up a conflict. And so here's the same similar thing, is it not? And that is that we've got stirring up the conflict up here in 15:18. At the same time, we've got stirring up a conflict in 29:22. Here's the hot-tempered person. Here's an angry person. Okay, so if we think, oh no, it's just the hot-tempered people that stir up the conflict, well, it's somebody who's just angry too. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same principle of somebody who's angry, and then they start to act on their anger, and then that starts to get other people angry, and then before long you've got all this conflict that's going on. Okay, so an angry person stirs up a conflict, but now we have something that's going to be similar. So here we've got angry, and we've got hot-tempered. Okay, we've got conflict, and we've got commits many sins, isn't it? And so if anger and hot-tempered is going to be taking anger up a step, then conflict and committing many sins is going to be taking it up a step, isn't it? Because we may look at conflict and we may think, oh, well, that's just the way that it is. That's the way that life is. That's the way people are. You're coming down on me for something that is everybody's got a problem with doing. Okay, but that still doesn't negate what the real problem is. And the real problem is this, and that is that we are committing many sins. All right? When we start to allow our anger, and by the way, in Ephesians chapter 4, and I forgot the verse, but it talks about in your anger, do not sin. Okay? Anger is a natural emotion. It's not that we are going to be getting rid of the anger. It's just that we're going to be dealing with the anger instead of the anger dealing with us. Okay? When we allow the anger to start to deal with us and we act on it, that's when we start to have problems, and that's when we start to commit many sins. That is, that we're displaying folly, that's a sin. We're starting to stirring up a conflict, that's a sin, right? And so we've got to remember that anger is not just simply something that everybody deals with and it's no big deal. We need to remember that anger is something that everybody needs to deal with, and we need to deal with it wisely. I've heard it said that anger is one letter away from danger. Okay. I think so. I think it's right. Huh? Okay. Well,
Angry. Oh,
anger is one letter
anger.
away from
I was thinking
danger.
angry. Oh,
Yeah.
that's why. Anger. Okay, now it makes sense.
Okay. I'm glad that worked out, because otherwise I was going to be really angry about something that I had learned for all these years and said for all these
Yeah, I was just sitting there staring at angry, and I was like, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. Dangry. I am dangry about being hangry.
That's what my first thought was.
Okay. All right. Got any comments or questions about that one?
I think the rest of that verse in Ephesians talks about do not give the devil a foothold.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite phrases in the Bible
Yes.
about anger.
Yes.
Because it like, to me, it like points out the immediate consequence of anger. Like, you start to act in your anger and you give the devil a little crack to get in.
Right.
And then I think of Toby. I think I've told you.
Well, I was about to say, I think of Toby too. Now, some of you, maybe you remember my illustration of Toby. Toby was my black lab that we used to have a long time ago. And Toby was notorious for, if you gave him just a little bit of a foothold, it was all over with. He would come up and he would very slyly, naively just lay his head on your lap, and he just loved to be pet and scratched, and he'd be there, and you'd be petting him, and then all of a sudden here would go a paw. And if he got that paw on your lap, it was all over with, because the moment he did, you would have an 85-pound lab right there. And the same is true when we'd have him in the back of the truck. And we had cracked the back glass, and we could only crack it just enough, because if he could fit the width of his nose in that glass, we'd have an 85-pound lab in the cab of the truck. Because he would throw that glass open and he'd squeeze in that window and he'd be in. So
That's what I think about when I think about Satan getting a foothold.
yeah, well, I mean, literally, that's what it is. A foothold is a
85-pound lab.
No, it is a place to put a foot so that you can gain leverage over your opponent and win in a conflict. Okay? And, when you think about, somebody committing many sins, somebody having quarrels, somebody displaying folly, the devil is winning these battles. Right? Okay. All right. So, going on down, let's talk about some other things. Let's look at Proverbs 20, chapter 20 and verse number 3. It is to one's honor to avoid strife, but every fool is quick to quarrel. Okay? So, when we look at the very first part of that, and that is, it is to somebody's honor, what are they being honored about? What brings them honor? To avoid the strife. Okay? So what is going to be contrasting to avoiding strife? Quick to quarrel. Okay? You can look and say, here is honor, and honor is going to be contrasted with fool or foolishness. Okay, there is that contrast that's there. But when you think about somebody who's going to be avoiding strife, it really is going to be to their ultimate honor. Now, let me ask you a question. When you are in a situation where you have to avoid strife, what are some of the things that you have to do in order to avoid it? You have to hold your tongue, or you have to speak calmly. Okay. What happens if you're in a situation where somebody is saying you're wrong and you're not wrong?
You have to just say, Maybe I am. I sometimes have now learned it's just best to say, you might be right, and just not, I mean, as long as it's not something that's going to, harm them or by not having the right or going the wrong direction. But yeah, I just have learned that sometimes.
Smile and nod.
Yeah.
So in other words, sometimes in order to avoid strife, you have to sacrifice your own pride.
Yeah.
Just be meek.
You have to be meek, right? Okay. And by the way, when Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek," he did not say, "Blessed are the weak." Meekness and weakness are similar spellings, totally different words. We always need to remember, because we oftentimes think being meek is being weak, right? Losing a fight is being weak. Well, maybe losing a fight is being weak, but why do we have to win it to begin with, right? Ultimately, we need to remember that it really is to our own honor to avoid strife. Think about the times that you have been on the outside looking in at two people, right? Okay. What do you sometimes think when somebody is avoiding the conflict and avoiding the strife? What is your opinion of them versus the person who keeps pressing the issue? They're what? They're more mature. They're more dignified. They're wiser. They're humble. Okay. What is your opinion of this person who keeps pressing the issue? What a jerk. Makes me angry.
They're the problem.
They're the problem, right? And so even though at the time, as far as, at the moment of what we're dealing with, as far as the outside looking in, let's remember that our Christian witness is going to be bigger if we would do the very first part of this proverb instead of the second part. Look in the second part of this proverb. Every fool is quick to quarrel. Okay? Other translations will say, but fools are easily falling into a quarrel, something to that effect. In other words, it's not every single fool is going to be quick to quarrel, because, there's other fools that are going to be doing other things. But it's that the people who are foolish are going to find themselves more likely to get into a quarrel, and they're going to be very quick to quarrel as they go. Does that make sense? And why are they going to be quick to quarrel? They're going to be quick to quarrel because they're a fool, and that's what fools do. It's going to be somebody who is patient and understanding, who is going to be having honor and wisdom, in control of themselves and avoiding strife. All right. Questions and comments about that one? Moving on then to chapter 26 and verse number 21. Okay, so here is a proverb that has to do with the comparison, and that is that we've got, I guess this is going to be an emblematic parallelism here, and that is that we've got the very first line here as far as charcoal to embers and as wood to a fire, and then the comparison is going to be down here. And so, here is this kind of metaphoric use of something that is going on, and then we're having the metaphor part is going to be the last part about this quarrelsome person. Okay? And so we have to think, okay, what is charcoals to embers? And by the way, what is embers? I had to really kind of think about this. What are we talking about with embers?
Is that like the hot, like pieces of maybe of a coal that's still burning?
Yeah, I think of it like when you're out barbecuing hamburgers, and you put the briquettes in there with the charcoal, and then you set them on fire, and then it's not very hot to start out with, but then after they turn the white and they started to disappear in the grave, that's when you hold your hand over there and it just it's like holding it onto the surface of the sun, right?
Sound like glass.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so you get the idea about something that starts here and winds up here. And so the same as far as wood to a fire, and that is it starts here and ends up here. Okay, it feeds it. Right. Okay. And so in the same way, you've got a quarrelsome person who is starting here and then ending there with kindling strife. A quarrelsome person is going to be somebody who's going to be somebody who is quick to quarrel, right? And they're known to be quick to quarrel. They just have a tendency to it. It's just, hey, have you ever known people that they just want to fight, period? It's like, hey, how are you this morning? And they will argue with you. It's a beautiful day outside.
No, it's not.
They'll argue with you. There's going to be some people that just, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, they just want to fight about it.
Hey,
so
have a
you
good
got
day.
a
Don't tell me what to do.
There you go. There you go.
I don't care.
Don't have a good day. I told you not to tell me what to do. Okay, so a quarrelsome person is going to start out something. It's going to be the fuel to the end, and the end is going to be kindling strife. With all that's going on with what they do, this is going to be the end result of it, and that is strife, conflict, dissension, problems in a group, and so on and so forth. Comments on that one? Okay. Moving on to this one. I like this one. This is another one that is, somewhat of I won't say emblematic, but it's a comparison, and that is starting a quarrel is like breaching a dam. So drop the matter before a dispute breaks out.
I've never heard this proverb, but I like it a lot.
This is one of my favorites.
This is one of my favorites too.
There's so many times I can think back and it was kind of escalating, and then you say that one thing, and then the dam breaks, and I look back and just think, why did I say that?
And the expression breaching a dam literally is just the letting out of water. Okay, and so if you think about it, you've got a reservoir with whatever dam, and it is filled with water. When you start to go and just breach that dam just a little bit, where's the water going? Out. All right? And as the water is going out, maybe it's tearing the dam down as it goes, but whatever the case is, it's going and it's doing what water does.
Well, it's destroying everything in its path.
It's flooding. Yeah, it is. And so,
Can't put it back in.
You can't put it back in. That's right. It's just going to go. It's going to go until you repair the dam and stop it.
I like that. You can't put it back in.
You can't.
You cannot take it back.
Right.
And as fast as it goes out, it takes a lot longer for a dam to fill back up.
It does. It sure does. So what's the better thing to do? What's the wise thing to do?
Drop it.
Just drop the matter before a dispute breaks out.
That comes back to humility again.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you are obsessed with having the last say, you might not ever get the last say, and then everything is damaged beyond repair.
So here we go back to the beginning of wisdom, which is what? The fear of the Lord. When we have the fear of the Lord, who is in control? When we don't have the fear of the Lord, who is in control? When you stop and think about it, when we don't have the fear of the Lord, then aren't we really kind of putting ourselves up as our own God? We're putting ourselves up on our own authority. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that because I don't have to. I don't want to drop this matter because I want to press it to the end.
And if you're not putting yourself in that position, then you're putting yourself up as a pawn for Satan.
We are. We absolutely are. And so, Mackenzie, exactly what you're talking about here. It does take humility with all of this, you know. But if we're going to be looking at it wisely, we're going to be looking at the bigger picture, aren't we? And we're going to be looking at it from God's perspective. And we're going to be thinking, wait a minute, there is something bigger at stake than my own emotions and my own feelings and my own pride. What is bigger at stake is God, His work, His church, His family, His relationships, His witness, right? You know? And so when we look at it that regard, it's like, no, this is the wise choice. It's not the natural choice. It's not the one we don't want to do, but it is the wise choice.
I think another angle is trusting that God can handle that person. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be responsible for their judgment or their knowledge or their wisdom or their decisions. Mm-hmm. Like, I can pray for them and trust that God will handle all of that for that person.
And if they don't, you know, it's not God's fault.
It's not my problem either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, last one, 22:10. Drive out the mocker, and out goes strife. Quarrels and insults are ended. One reason why I want to pick this one is this, mocker. Okay? Because we've been talking about anger, and then the quarreling that is kind of the result of somebody's anger that's there. You know what? Strife doesn't always have to come from anger, does it? Strife can come from this right here, a mocker. What is a mocker? One who mocks, one who scoffs, one who is just saying something to be contrary. You know, it doesn't even have to be somebody who is saying things in anger. It can be somebody who is just saying things just because they want to be difficult. Condescending, disagreeable. Have you seen somebody before? I've seen it before, where somebody who will take an opposite point about something and stir up a bunch of trouble, not because they really have anything that they want to stand on, but because they want the trouble, you know? They'll say something and it's like throwing a grenade out there in the room, and then they'll just turn around and walk out and let everybody else deal with the destruction.
Well, sometimes too, people, they want to be that way with certain individuals. I've known people that if somebody else can say something or do something, they think it's a great idea, they're totally in favor of it. But then if somebody else says it or does it,
right,
immediately it's a problem, immediately they're against it, immediately they're upset about it, because they're just trying to cause problems for that individual.
Right.
And it's not really, it has nothing to do with what it is, it's just they want that person to have trouble.
That's it. And so here we've got this proverb of drive out the mocker, and out goes the strife. You got the mocker there, and what is he doing? He's causing the strife. You get the mocker out of the situation, and all of a sudden, hey, things are just so much better. You know, have you ever been in a group like that where you've got one person who's just so disagreeable and so contrary, and just, you know, and then when they leave, it's just like, wow, this is so much better. In other words, it takes a lot of people to create something good, but it doesn't take much. It doesn't take many people to cause problems with things. One bad apple, absolutely. Quarrels and insults are ended. Okay, I think that we are done for tonight. Anybody have any comments or questions about things? No? Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's bow our heads and we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for your word. We thank you for the guidance that it gives us. Lord, help us to take these things to heart. Help us take a look at our own lives and help us to focus on being wise and being good witnesses and examples for you. Please give us the grace and the mercy that we need so that we can do this and apply these things to our lives. Lord, please forgive us of our sins. Be with us as we go our ways. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.